Today we are talking about feelings and emotions. Men, women, and children. We all have them, and we all decide how to deal with them. So this video is for every human on the planet. Welcome to LilyTube. Please take a moment to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll receive notice of all our great content, hot off the press.
This video has been funded by Loans by Vicky, the best loan officer around. If you've been interested in buying a home recently, Vicky is the right pick for you. She makes things easy and communication is effortless. With access to dozens of lenders, it's no surprise that she has the best rates we've seen. Loans by Vicky, the smoothest option to getting settled into the home of your dreams. In most areas of life, people are quite accepting of the need to be intentional about managing our emotions. For example, most of us understand that having an emotional meltdown in our place of employment and screaming and yelling at coworkers or supervisors would get us fired. Most of us are pretty good at being intentional about controlling our tempers in the workplace. In the home, where some feel overly comfortable, they might feel justified in screaming and yelling at their loved ones. That would be an exception to the general idea that people are actually pretty good at being intentional in most areas of social interaction. Just sometimes it's not always internal or at home.
Now, Cathy, one very obvious way that people tend to rule with their feelings rather than their choices is in the creation and the longevity of relationships. Many, if not most people, base their relationships on the emotions of love. That may be romantic, but when those emotions inevitably wane at times, many become convinced that they are not really in love anymore. Oftentimes, they sever those relationships and go looking for true love elsewhere. We often hear, "I'm just not feeling it," which could indicate that feelings are ruling our relationships rather than making intentional choices about who we love. A couple that has lost the spark but is intentional can recreate that spark by working on their thoughts to recreate the spark and emotion of love. Think about it. How could we really trust the vows of someone who bases their entire relationship on emotion? How can you promise to love someone and be with them forever if you have no control over who you feel love for?
While feeling love is important, that feeling is the fruit of a good relationship, not the root. A good long-term relationship is rooted in agency and intention. It is owning our own thoughts and feelings about our partner. Being responsible for our emotions is one of the best gifts we can give any relationship. As life coaches, we understand and teach our clients that our thoughts create our feelings, and we have choices about which thoughts to hang on to and which to let go of. We have the power to replace the stories we tell with more supportive thinking.
You know, Cathy, I've read a lot of Shakespeare, one of my favorite authors, one of many people's favorite authors. Shakespeare, if you want to take all of the tragedies and the comedies that he wrote and kind of boil them down to one basic point, the comedies are laughing at people who are letting their hearts rule their heads. Like Falstaff, for example, in Merry Wives of Windsor. He's making a fool of himself, throwing himself after these women that are just toying with him. And, you know, you take in terms of the tragedies, Romeo and Juliet. What did they do? They committed suicide thinking that the other person was dead and, you know, ruling with their heart when actually maybe they would have had a life together if they hadn't been so impulsive. Look at Othello. At the end of the play, Othello says that he loved Desdemona not wisely, but too well. And he ended up killing her because he got so jealous of an affair she wasn't even having. And so I think with Shakespeare, we have good illustrations. And I mean, I could go on and on about this, but we have really great illustrations in a lot of his plays that his wisdom is about you need to balance your heart and your feelings with what's here in the old noodle.
When we have loved and lost, especially with divorce or breakups from partners who weren't good for us, we can easily attract the same kind of partner when our feelings are running us because that's what we're used to. I know for me, I had to shift out of what I was used to in order to create what I really wanted. I had to choose something that was more balanced and interdependent rather than codependent patterns I had previously experienced. That meant doing some personal work to feel confident and comfortable being happy and okay as a single person, with a relationship being a bonus rather than a fundamental need.
For our married viewers, many people in this world govern their sex lives purely by their libido and whether they are in the mood, even if their relationships are good and they enjoy sex once they get into it. Again, this is not being intentional or purposefully creating the kind of sex life we think would be best for us in our marriage. It is being at the mercy of our mood. There is nothing written by the finger of God saying that you must be in the mood to begin a sexual encounter with your loved one. If you know it's going to be pleasurable and you know it would be good for your marriage, why not be intentional instead of being ruled by your impulses? Also, Cathy, you've heard me say this before, but when we go to Lagoon, I don't think either of us have some inborn impulse that we might call roller coaster drive.
I don't know, maybe some people do.
If I haven't been on a roller coaster in 3 days, I feel anxious or whatever.
That's actually probably true.
We don't have something called roller coaster drive, so why do we go get on a roller coaster? We do it because it's fun and we know it's going to be fun. We're not necessarily driven to get on the roller coaster, but we know it's going to be really fun when we get on it. The same thing can be true of your intimate relationship with your spouse. You can decide to engage those feelings knowing that once you get into it, you're going to have a great time.
You know, Jeff, I once had a student who was not loving a violin piece that I was teaching her, and she didn't feel in the mood to ever practice it or to even be playing it with me at lesson. And I asked her the question, I said, what would happen if your mom did whatever she felt like? And she got these really big, wide blue eyes looking at me and said, well, I think if my mom did whatever she felt like, I would be dead. I will never forget that story. I don't think it was because she was a particularly bad kid or like a naughty child. I think it's just because she recognized that, oh, my mom doesn't actually just do whatever she feels like.
I mean, kids get abused when parents are just doing what comes naturally.
It's true. That is one really important point, actually, is that if we want to not be abusive parents, then we have to be in charge of our emotions. We absolutely have to be.
The key to keeping our promises in marriage is intentionality, which includes making purposeful choices about what to think and ultimately what feelings result from that thinking. Intentionality is the root and loving emotions are the fruit. Stephen Covey was famous for telling this story at seminars. At one of the seminars he was teaching, a man came up to him and said, "Oh, Stephen, I'm really worried. My wife and I are really worried. We just don't love each other anymore. What advice would you give me?" And Dr. Covey said, "Love her." And he said, "Well, you don't understand. I want to love her, I just don't. I don't feel it." And Dr. Covey said, "Love her." And he said, "What if I don't love her?" And he said, "Love her, listen to her, serve her, do nice things for her." And he made love be about the intentional things we can do that will help us grow those feelings.
Yeah, I really love that story. As we wrap up this conversation, the question we each need to ask ourselves is, are my emotions running me, or am I running my emotions? We are all probably likely doing both. However, the more we can steer towards running our emotions rather than the other way around, the better off we are in creating the life and relationships that we want. Thanks so much for watching, and remember that any time is a great time for more love in your life.